The emergency signal from the Deathworld Alliance monitoring network pulsed through the quantum relay, its distinctive red glow illuminating the otherwise dimly lit Interplanetary Operations Center on Earth's moon. Colonel Nisha Cortez, the stern-faced representative of the United Nations Space Force, felt her heart rate quicken as the transmission materialized before her eyes. "We need immediate assistance." The gravelly voice of Grand Chieftain Torian Marath echoed through the chamber. His holographic form, tall, imposing, with scaled skin that reflected an otherworldly iridescence, flickered as the quantum connection struggled to maintain integrity across the vast distance. "The Ascendancy has breached our final defensive line on Vecra Prime. 6 billion Torians. Gone." The silence that followed was deafening. Colonel Williams, Cortez's second-in-command, swallowed hard. The implications of such a catastrophic loss not lost on anyone present. "The Alliance stands at the precipice of extinction," Morath continued, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "Only you can change the course of this war. We implore you, give us a chance." Cortez studied the alien diplomat's face, searching for signs of deception. The Deathworld Alliance, a coalition of species that had survived on the harshest planets in the known universe, had been locked in a 30-year conflict with the Ascendancy, a parallel humanity that had evolved along a path of extreme supremacist ideology. Reports indicated that over 15 DWA worlds had already fallen. "This transmission will be broadcast across Earth," Cortez finally responded. "The United Nations Security Council will convene for an emergency session. This is the first time the Galactic Assembly has locked in session to discuss the survival of an extraterrestrial alliance." "We await your decision," Morath said, bowing his head before his image dissolved into particles of light. Cortez turned to Colonel Williams. "Contact the Security Council. We have a lot to discuss." The Grand Assembly Hall of the United Nations headquarters in New York buzzed with tension. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered, their faces grave as they absorbed the dire situation presented before them. Holographic displays projected images of devastated worlds, once thriving civilizations reduced to ash and rubble. Nisha Cortez stood at attention as Marath and his Sistaran counterpart, Lieutenant Commander Hassa, presented their case. The evidence was damning: maps of lost worlds, footage of the Vecra Prime catastrophe, emergency logs from DWA officers describing unimaginable horrors. "The Ascendancy's primary advantage is their dimensional rift technology," Hassa explained, her sinuous form gliding across the stage as she manipulated the holographic display. "They open gateways between parallel universes, allowing their armadas to bypass our defensive lines and strike at our core worlds." "What guarantees do we have that this alliance won't compromise Earth's national security?" demanded the Russian representative. "We cannot risk exposing our planet to alien technology that might be misused." Similar concerns echoed from the Chinese and Indian delegations. The specter of weaponized alien technology falling into the wrong hands loomed large in everyone's minds. Morath stepped forward, his expression solemn. "I understand your concerns, but this crisis transcends individual worlds. If the Ascendancy continues its expansion and turns its gaze toward Earth, nowhere will be safe. They do not see other species, or even alternate versions of humanity, as equals. They see only resources to be harvested and territories to be conquered." Hours of debate followed, with factions forming among Earth's nations. The conservative bloc argued for a policy of isolation and non-interference, while progressive voices advocated for intervention on humanitarian grounds. Finally, after a rapid vote, the Earth representatives approved the DWA Assistance Treaty. Earth committed to providing military advisors and a small, specialized force to bolster the Alliance's defenses. It wasn't everything Morath had hoped for, but it was a start. "We will establish the Earth DWA Combined Forces," Cortez announced. Accelerated training centers will be set up on the Moon and Titan. As the meeting adjourned, Cortez approached Morath privately. I hope we're making the right decision, she said, her voice barely audible. When facing extinction, Morath replied, the right decision is whichever one keeps you alive long enough to make the next decision. The titanium and glass domes of the Titan training facility gleamed under the distant light of Saturn. Their reinforced structures designed to withstand the Moon's extreme conditions. Inside, a diverse group of Earth's finest military personnel underwent intensive training alongside DWA veterans. Among them was Hussein Ibarra, a 25-year-old tactical command recruit from Earth, with his Egyptian Indian heritage and background in algorithmic theory. Hussein had caught Morath's attention during the selection process and been assigned to the Unconventional Tactics Unit. Your species possesses something unique, Morath told Hussein during their first meeting. A capacity for what you call improvisation, something our military doctrine has never fully embraced. Hussein observed the training simulations with growing concern. The DWA forces fought with precision and discipline, but their strategies were rigid, predictable, against an enemy that had studied their tactics for decades. Such inflexibility was fatal. Meanwhile, in the research wing, Dr. Maya Tita, a 45-year-old Japanese-Brazilian geneticist, was making a controversial proposal to the Joint Command. The neural enhancement program could accelerate cognitive response by 30 to 50%, she explained, displaying brain scans on the laboratory's main screen. When paired with the DWA synchronization interface, our soldiers could process battlefield information at unprecedented speeds. Hussein, who had been invited to the presentation, raised his hand. At what cost to our humanity? Dr. Tita met his gaze. The modifications are temporary and reversible, but I understand your concern. Lieutenant Ibarra, the question of where enhancement ends and transformation begins is one we must constantly reevaluate. Morath, who had been silently observing the exchange, finally spoke. My species spent 3 centuries debating similar questions, while our outer colonies fell one by one. We cannot afford such luxury now. The debate was temporarily shelved when an alarm sounded throughout the facility. The first major simulation exercise was about to begin. Hussein joined his mixed unit of Earth and DWA personnel in the command center. The scenario: defend a critical supply line against an ascendancy incursion. The opposing force would be controlled by the Alliance AI, programmed to mimic ascendancy tactics with frightening accuracy. Begin simulation, Hussein ordered, deploying his forces according to standard doctrine. Within minutes, the AI had predicted and countered every move. Hussein watched in dismay as his forces were systematically outmaneuvered and destroyed. 3 more attempts yielded the same results. We need to change our approach, Hussein muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Then, inspiration struck. What if we incorporate jazz improvisation into our tactical framework? The DWA officers looked at him in confusion. Jazz? Lieutenant Commander Hassa asked, her translator struggling with the concept. A form of music where performers deviate from the standard pattern, creating unpredictable variations, Hussein explained. We need to introduce tactical elements that don't follow classical patterns, movements that can't be predicted by statistical analysis. Skeptical, but desperate, the team implemented Hussein's jazz tactics in the next simulation. They programmed randomized decision trees and counterintuitive maneuvers that defied conventional military wisdom. The result was a stunning victory. Impressive, Morath acknowledged afterward. But can such tactics work in real combat situations? Hussein's answer was interrupted by a base-wide alert. The Ascendancy had detected their presence on Titan and opened a dimensional rift in Saturn's orbit. A heavy-class battlecruiser was emerging from the spatial tear. It seems we're about to find out, Hussein said grimly. Lieutenant General Cortez, now commanding the EDFA defensive fleet, quickly deployed to Titan's orbit. Admiral Hussein Ibarra, recently promoted for his tactical innovations, coordinated the response from the command center. "Initiate Operation Riftbreaker," Cortez ordered. "We have one chance to prevent a full-scale invasion of the Sol system." The operation had 3 phases. First, deploy the static field array, DWA technology designed to stabilize the space around Titan and prevent additional rifts from forming. Second, implement Hussein's improvisation formation, with mixed Earth DWA vessels moving in patterns that defied predictive algorithms. Finally, activate the Rift Breaker device, which would theoretically collapse the dimensional gateway and cut off the Ascendancy's reinforcements. As the Ascendancy fleet approached, Hussein gave the command for Phase 2. The combined forces executed a series of bewildering maneuvers that momentarily confused the enemy sensors, creating a vulnerability for the convergence strike. "They're adapting," Hassa warned from her tactical station. "The Ascendancy vessels are beginning to mimic our improvisation patterns." Hussein nodded, having anticipated this. "Shift to classical formation beta," he ordered. "Let's use their adaptation against them." The EDFA fleet abruptly returned to traditional patterns, but with subtle variations that trapped the Ascendancy ships in a predictable response loop. As the enemy fleet bunched together, trying to recalibrate, Hussein gave the command to activate the Rift Breaker. The massive energy array surrounding the dimensional rift pulsed with blue-white light, causing the spatial tear to constrict. Caught between dimensions, the Ascendancy reinforcements were temporarily frozen in a state of quantum uncertainty. "Now!" Hussein shouted. The EDFA forces surged forward, employing the full range of jazz tactics to overwhelm the isolated Ascendancy vanguard. The Ascendancy command ship, a Dominance-class dreadnought, broadcast a death battle edict, forcing Hussein and Morath into a direct tactical confrontation. They had to choose between forcing the enemy to surrender or destroying the ship entirely, potentially taking both sides with it. In that critical moment, Hussein remembered Dr. Tita's words. "Only when you know when to turn back can you truly claim victory." He made a daring decision, triggering a reverse rift pulse that would push the entire Ascendancy fleet back through the dimensional gateway, collapsing it behind them. The maneuver worked. The rift closed with a final burst of energy. The Ascendancy fleet in Titan's orbit either destroyed or forced to retreat. Titan's defense systems remained largely intact. "The immediate threat has been neutralized," Cortez reported, her face appearing on the command center's main screen. "The DWA now has a 3-year window to reinforce Vecra Prime and the remaining planets. The Ascendancy has lost its initiative and must shift to a defensive posture." The aftermath brought new challenges and opportunities. The next Alliance summit was held aboard the Unity station in Titan's orbit, with representatives from Earth, the DWA, and supporting species determining a common development roadmap. Medical technologies, infinite energy from the antimatter forge, and an interstellar hologrid communication network were prioritized for joint development. Hussein Ibarra, now Fleet Marshal of the EDFA and celebrating his 35th birthday, delivered a speech transferring the improvisation artifact, a tactical journal describing how to transcend patterns to achieve victory, to the shared archives. "This is not just a record of our military strategies," he explained. "It represents a philosophy of adaptation and creativity that transcends our differences. Together, we have proven that diversity of thought is our greatest strength." A decade later, in 2058, the Deathworld Alliance had begun to recover. 4 core planets had been rebuilt, their populations restored to 70% of pre-war levels. The technological lifeblood of the DWA had doubled in capacity. The Earth DWA Alliance held a solemn funeral for Morath, the last leader of the Rada Synapse, who had passed away at the age of 320. He was honored as the bridge between 2 civilizations that had saved each other from destruction. On Titan's moon, the Pact Promenade was expanded, featuring statues of Nisha Cortez and Marath walking side by side, a reminder of the golden moment when Earth decided to sever the brink of extinction. News broadcasts throughout the Sol system reported that remnants of the Ascendancy had been detected in another dimension, seeking to rebuild their forces. The EDFA prepared to enter a new chapter in the struggle to protect the multiverse. But this time, with a spirit not just of war, but of life and a shared future. The Grand Chamber of the United Nations Interstellar Assembly was packed to capacity. Representatives from all major Earth nations and DWA species had gathered for the anniversary of the Alliance. Admiral Hussein Ibarra, now a respected figure across multiple worlds, took the podium with measured steps. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. We faced an enemy that believed in absolute predictability, that every action could be calculated, every response anticipated. They nearly succeeded in their conquest because they studied patterns and exploited them. Hussein paused, his gaze sweeping across the diverse assembly. What they failed to understand was that life itself resists such rigid classification. The essence of our victory wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology, though both played their part. It was our willingness to embrace uncertainty, to incorporate the seemingly chaotic elements of human creativity with the disciplined precision of DWA tactical doctrine. In the front row, Lieutenant General Cortez, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Unified Defense Forces, nodded in agreement. Beside her sat Hassa, who had become the new representative of the Sistaran High Council after the passing of her predecessor. But our work isn't finished, Hussein continued. Recent intelligence suggests that the Ascendancy hasn't abandoned their expansionist ideology. They're regrouping in their home dimension, studying our tactics, adapting their strategies. We must remain vigilant. The Assembly stirred uneasily at this news. The memory of Vecra Prime's devastation remained fresh in collective memory, a wound that had barely begun to heal. However, Hussein's tone lightened. We aren't the same alliance that faced them a decade ago. Our integrated research teams have made breakthroughs in dimensional stabilization technology. Our military doctrines have evolved beyond simple improvisation to a comprehensive adaptive framework. And most importantly, our peoples have begun to truly understand one another. In the observation gallery, Dr. Maya Tita watched with a mixture of pride and concern. The neural enhancement program she had pioneered had evolved considerably over the years, becoming more refined and less invasive. Still, she worried about the long-term consequences of melding human cognition with alien technology. After the assembly, she approached Hussein in a quiet corridor. Your speech was inspiring, she said. But I noticed you didn't mention the recent breakthrough in neural interfacing. Hussein's expression grew serious. The collective consciousness protocol is still experimental. Maya, I have reservations about how far we should push the integration of our minds, even in the name of tactical advantage. Yet you underwent the enhancement yourself, she observed. A calculated risk, he acknowledged. One I felt was necessary given my position. But to implement it across the entire command structure, that's a different matter entirely. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert on Hussein's communication device. A dimensional anomaly had been detected in the Kuiper Belt, a signature that matched Ascendancy Rift technology. We should continue this discussion later, Hussein said, already moving toward the command center. It seems our enemy isn't content to wait for our anniversary celebrations to conclude. Dr. Tita watched him go, wondering if the humanity they were fighting to preserve would still be recognizable when this conflict finally ended. The tactical operations room aboard the EDFA flagship Harmony was a hive of activity. Officers from Earth and various DWA species worked seamlessly together, their movements choreographed by years of joint training and shared combat experience. Dimensional signature confirmed, announced Lieutenant Krerover, one of the first Earth soldiers to undergo the full neural enhancement program. His eyes flickered with subtle augmented reality displays as he processed incoming data streams. Pattern matches ascendancy technology, but something's different. The energy signature is more diffuse. Hussein studied the holographic representation of the anomaly hovering above the central table. "They're testing us," he concluded, "probing our detection capabilities, seeing how quickly we respond. Or it could be a trap," Supreme Commander Cortez suggested from her position near the tactical display. "Draw our forces out to the Kuiper Belt, then strike elsewhere while our fleet is out of position." "Agreed." Hussein nodded. "We'll deploy a minimal response force to investigate the anomaly. Meanwhile, I want all inter-system defenses on high alert. Double the patrol frequency around the Jupiter and Saturn orbital stations." As the officers moved to implement his orders, Hussein turned to a secure communication terminal and established a direct link to the DWA High Command on the rebuilt Vecra Prime. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Grand Admiral Caliston, Morath's successor as military leader of the Taurian people. "Admiral Ibarra," Caliston greeted him, her scaled features arranged in what Hussein had learned to recognize as a formal expression of respect. "Our sensors detected the anomaly as well. The Council is concerned this may herald the beginning of a new offensive." "Possibly," Hussein acknowledged. "But the pattern doesn't match their usual invasion protocols. I believe they're testing a new form of rift technology, something designed to circumvent our detection grid." "Our scientists have been analyzing the data," Caliston replied. "They believe the Ascendancy may have found a way to create micro-rifts, portals too small for ships to pass through, but large enough for information transfer. Essentially, a form of dimensional espionage." The implications were troubling. If the Ascendancy could observe Edifa movements without detection, their strategic advantage would be considerable. "We need to accelerate the deployment of the new quantum shield network," Hussein decided. "And I want joint research teams working on countermeasures immediately." "Agreed," Caliston said. "I'll have our best scientists coordinate with Dr. Tita's team. In the meantime, we should consider implementing Protocol Silence." Protocol Silence was a contingency plan developed in the aftermath of the Titan battle, a complete communications blackout, combined with randomized fleet movements designed to confuse any observational intelligence gathering. It was disruptive to normal operations, but effective at preventing enemy intelligence collection. "Let's hold that in reserve for now," Hussein replied. "I don't want to alarm the civilian population unless we're certain of hostile intent." As the communication ended, Hussein became aware of a presence behind him. Lieutenant Commander Hassa had entered silently, her fluid movements barely disturbing the air. "Your caution is wise," she said. "But remember what happened the last time we hesitated." Hussein understood her concern. The Sistaran homeworld had been among the first to fall to the Ascendancy, its population decimated before the DWA could mount an effective response. "This is different," he assured her. "We're prepared now, united. They won't catch us off guard again." Hassa's expression remained skeptical, but she nodded in acceptance. "The collective consciousness protocol could give us a definitive advantage in this situation. With linked minds, our response time would be reduced to milliseconds." "At what cost?" Hussein asked quietly. "You've seen the test subjects, Hassa. The way they begin to lose their individual identities, merging into something different." "Different doesn't necessarily mean worse," she countered. "My people have used a limited form of consciousness sharing for generations. It strengthens rather than diminishes us." "Your species evolved with that capability," Hussein pointed out. "Humans didn't. We're tampering with the fundamental architecture of our minds." Their philosophical disagreement was interrupted by a priority alert. The probe sent to investigate the Kuiper Belt anomaly had arrived at its destination and found something unexpected. The main screen filled with imagery from the probe's sensors. The dimensional rift hadn't disappeared as expected. Instead, it had stabilized, forming a small but persistent gateway. And emerging from that gateway was not an Ascendancy warship, but a single, unarmed vessel bearing diplomatic markings. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," Lieutenant Crariver reported, surprise evident in his voice. "It's a request for parley." Hussein and Hassa exchanged skeptical glances. In 30 years of conflict, the Ascendancy had never sought diplomatic solutions. Their ideology of supremacy precluded negotiation with inferior species. "It could be a deception," Cortez warned, joining them at the tactical display. "A way to get close to our command structure." "Perhaps," Hussein agreed. "But we can't ignore the possibility, however slim, that something has changed in their hierarchy. Prepare a secure communication channel, but maintain combat readiness. I want to hear what they have to say." The face that appeared on the communication screen was unmistakably human, yet subtly different from Earth humans. Higher cheekbones, slightly elongated cranium, eyes with an unusual violet hue. This was Supreme Commander J. Mal, the highest-ranking military leader of the Ascendancy forces. "Admiral Ibarra," Mal began, his voice carrying a melodic quality that Earth linguists had identified as characteristic of Ascendancy speech patterns. "I commend your caution. In your position, I would be equally suspicious." "State your purpose," Hussein replied curtly, unwilling to engage in pleasantries. "Direct, as expected." Mal smiled thinly. "Very well. I am authorized by the Ascendancy Directorate to propose a cessation of hostilities between our civilizations. The terms would include recognition of current territorial boundaries and a non-aggression pact lasting 100 standard years." The control room fell silent, officers exchanging disbelieving glances. After decades of relentless expansion and countless atrocities, this sudden proposal seemed impossible to credit. "You've given us no reason to trust such an offer," Cortez said, stepping forward to stand beside Hussein. "The Ascendancy's policy has always been conquest, not coexistence." "Policies can change when circumstances demand it," Mal replied, his expression revealing nothing. "We are not the monolithic entity you perceive us to be. There are factions within our society. Recent developments have strengthened those who favor a more sustainable approach to interuniversal relations." "What developments?" Hussein asked, intrigued despite his skepticism. Mal hesitated, apparently weighing how much to reveal. "Our home universe is dying," he finally said, "faster than our scientists predicted. The energy cost of maintaining dimensional rifts has accelerated the entropy cascade. We need to focus our resources on finding a solution, not fighting an increasingly costly war." Hussein studied the Ascendancy commander's face, searching for signs of deception. The neural enhancement program had improved his ability to detect micro-expressions, but Mal's control was impressive. "We would require verification," Hussein said carefully. "Independent scientific teams examining the data from your universe. Comprehensive monitoring of military deployments. A gradual, verified withdrawal from occupied DWA worlds." "Some of those conditions would be acceptable," Mal acknowledged. "Others would require negotiation. But I am authorized to invite a delegation to our capital to begin formal discussions. As a gesture of good faith, we will immediately cease all military operations against DWA and Earth forces." Hussein glanced at Cortez and Hassa, seeing his own caution reflected in their expressions. They had all witnessed Ascendancy duplicity before. "We will consider your proposal," Hussein finally said. "Maintain your current position. Any attempt to approach Earth or DWA territory without explicit clearance will be considered a hostile act." As the communication ended, the tactical room erupted in heated discussion. Officers debated the sincerity of the offer, the potential risks of negotiation, and the possibility that this was an elaborate trap. "Silence!" Cortez commanded, and the room immediately quieted. "Admiral Ibarra, your assessment?" Hussein took a moment to gather his thoughts. The claim about their universe's accelerated entropy is consistent with theoretical models our scientists developed. If they're telling the truth, it explains their desperate expansion. They're seeking resources to save their civilization, not just to conquer. "Even if that's true," Hassa interjected, "it doesn't erase their responsibility for billions of deaths. My people will not easily accept peace with those who slaughtered half our population." "Nor should they," Hussein agreed. "But if there's even a small chance to end this conflict without further bloodshed, we have a duty to explore it." "While remaining vigilant," Cortez added firmly. Hussein nodded. "Absolutely. I propose we assemble a small delegation, representatives from Earth and the DWA, protected by our best security measures. Meanwhile, we verify their claim of ceasing military operations and monitor that dimensional rift closely." "I'll coordinate with the Security Council," Cortez said. "They'll want to be involved in selecting Earth's representatives." "And I will consult with the DWA High Command," Hassa added, though her reluctance was evident. As the others departed to implement the plan, Hussein remained at the tactical display, studying the image of the Ascendancy diplomatic vessel. After a decade of war and countless lives lost, the prospect of peace seemed almost unreal, a mirage that might vanish at any moment. "You're troubled," Dr. Tita observed, joining him at the display. She had been silent during the exchange with Mal, observing from the periphery. "Wouldn't you be?" Hussein asked. "If they're sincere, this could save billions of lives. If it's a trap, then we lose our best chance to end this conflict," she finished for him. "The risk seems justified." Hussein turned to face her directly. "There's something else. If their universe truly is dying, they'll need more than a cessation of hostilities. They'll need our help to survive, possibly even relocation to our universe. Are we prepared to accept that? To live alongside those who committed genocide against our allies?" Dr. Tita considered the question carefully. "Morally, it's complex. Practically, it may be necessary. The alternative would be to condemn an entire civilization to extinction, becoming ourselves what we fought against." "Perhaps," Hussein acknowledged, "but such decisions shouldn't be made unilaterally. The peoples of both Earth and the DWA would need to consent. Democracy is messy." Dr. Tita smiled slightly. "But it's what separates us from them, isn't it? The belief that all voices matter, not just those deemed superior by some arbitrary standard." Hussein nodded, finding comfort in the simplicity of that distinction. Whatever came of this unexpected diplomatic overture, the core values that had united Earth and the DWA would guide their response. 3 days later, a joint Earth-DWA delegation departed for the dimensional rift aboard the diplomatic vessel Concordia. Hussein had been selected to lead the mission, with Dr. Tita included for her scientific expertise, and Hassa representing the DWA High Command. Supreme Commander Cortez remained behind to coordinate defense preparations, should the diplomatic initiative prove to be a ruse. As the Concordia approached the dimensional gateway, Hussein stood on the observation deck, watching the strange, shimmering boundary between universes. The bluish light pulsed with an irregular rhythm, like the heartbeat of some vast cosmic entity. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Dr. Tita remarked, joining him at the viewport. "It's easy to forget, amid all the destruction, that the dimensional rift technology represents one of the most profound scientific achievements in history. Beauty and terror often go hand in hand." Hussein replied, "The same discovery that allowed the Ascendancy to ravage the DWA worlds might now offer salvation to their dying universe." "If their claims are true," Hassa added, her tone still skeptical as she approached from behind them. "Our sensors indicate the rift is stable. Transport protocols have been verified. We are cleared to proceed. Hussein took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Signal the Ascendancy vessel. We're ready to make the crossing. The Concordia's engines hummed as the ship moved forward, entering the dimensional boundary. For a moment, reality itself seemed to waver, the laws of physics bending as they transitioned from one universe to another. Hussein felt a brief sensation of disorientation, a fluttering in his stomach as if he were falling. Then, stability returned. They had arrived in the Ascendancy's home universe. The sight that greeted them was both majestic and disturbing. A massive space station orbited a dying star, its surface a complex geometric pattern of metals unknown in Earth's universe. Surrounding the station were hundreds of warships, their designs more varied than any they had encountered in previous engagements. Impressive show of force for a diplomatic meeting, Hassa observed dryly. Or a demonstration of what they're willing to hold back, Dr. Tita suggested. A gesture to the strength of their peace faction. A communication signal pinged, and Supreme Commander Mal's face appeared on the main screen. Welcome to Ascendancy Prime, Admiral Ibarra. Your arrival marks a historic moment, the first peaceful contact between our civilizations. We appreciate the invitation, Hussein replied formally. We come seeking understanding and a possible path to coexistence. You shall have both, Mal assured him. Docking protocols are being transmitted to your vessel now. Upon arrival, you will be escorted to the High Directorate Chamber, where the ruling council awaits. As the communication ended, Hussein turned to his companions. Remember, stay alert. We verify everything. Trust nothing without evidence. Understood. Dr. Tita nodded. The DWA representatives are prepared for whatever comes, Hassa added, her hand subtly checking the concealed weapon she had insisted on bringing despite the diplomatic nature of their mission. The Concordia docked with precision at an extended arm of the space station. As the airlock cycled, Hussein mentally reviewed the diplomatic protocols they had hastily established. The situation was unprecedented. No human from Earth had ever set foot in the Ascendancy's universe before. When the doors finally opened, they were greeted by a delegation of Ascendancy officials. Like Mal, they appeared human, but with subtle differences. All possessed the characteristic violet eyes, and their uniforms displayed insignia representing different factions within their society. Admiral Ibarra, the lead figure, bowed slightly. I am Director Lisathea, appointed by the High Directorate to facilitate these discussions. If you and your delegates will follow me, the Council is assembled and eager to begin. As they were led through the station's corridors, Hussein noted the architectural style. Flowing, organic shapes blended with rigid geometric patterns in a way that was both aesthetically pleasing and slightly disorienting. The station's interior was bustling with activity, civilians and military personnel moving with purpose. Your infrastructure appears intact, Dr. Tita observed. Not what one would expect of a civilization facing imminent collapse. Appearances can be deceiving, Doctor. Lisathea replied smoothly. The entropy cascade affects fundamental forces at the quantum level. Our technology allows us to maintain normal operations until the final stages, at which point collapse would be rapid and absolute. They entered a vast chamber with a circular arrangement of elevated platforms. Upon each platform sat members of the High Directorate, 12 individuals representing the major factions of Ascendancy society. Supreme Commander Mal occupied one platform, indicating his status as a faction leader as well as military commander. Honored representatives of Earth and the Deathworld Alliance, the central figure announced, rising from her seat. I am High Director Samira, current first among equals in the Directorate. Your presence here represents a significant shift in our inter-universal relations. Hussein stepped forward. We come, seeking truth and the possibility of peace. But we must address the atrocities committed against the DWA worlds before any lasting agreement can be reached. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some approving, others clearly displeased. High Director Samira raised a hand for silence. We acknowledge that our expansion policy has resulted in significant loss of life, she stated, with clinical detachment. However, from our perspective, these actions were necessary for survival. Our universe faces terminal entropy collapse, a fact we are prepared to demonstrate scientifically. Even if that's true, Hassa interjected, her voice tight with controlled emotion. It doesn't justify genocide. There were alternatives to conquest. Were there? Mal asked, leaning forward on his platform. When your civilization faces extinction, moral calculus changes. Would your people not fight to survive, even at great cost to others? We would fight, Hussein acknowledged. But we would seek cooperation before conquest. You never approached the DWA with the truth, never asked for assistance or proposed coexistence. A failure of vision, Samira conceded, surprising the Earth DWA delegation. One that the recent factional shift within our society has brought to light. The pure dominion philosophy that guided our expansion is losing support as the entropy crisis accelerates. The Sustainable Coexistence faction, led by Commander Mal, has demonstrated that our current path leads to mutual destruction. Dr. Tita stepped forward. We would need to verify your claims about the entropy cascade, independent scientific teams, unrestricted access to data. Acceptable. Samira nodded. We have nothing to gain from deception at this point. Our scientists estimate we have less than 20 years before critical systems begin to fail irreversibly. And what exactly are you proposing? Hussein asked, coming to the heart of the matter. A three-phase approach, Mal answered. First, immediate cessation of hostilities and verification protocols. Second, collaborative research to address the entropy cascade, pooling the scientific resources of all our civilizations. Third, if a solution cannot be found, a gradual controlled relocation of Ascendancy citizens to viable regions of your universe, under terms that ensure security for all parties. The scope of the proposal was breathtaking and potentially threatening. Relocating an entire civilization across dimensional boundaries would strain resources and raise countless security concerns. Such an arrangement would require extensive guarantees, Hussein stated firmly. Demilitarization of Ascendancy forces, integration oversight, reparations to the DWA worlds that have suffered under your occupation. Some of these terms would be negotiable, Samira replied. Others would face significant opposition from certain factions, but we are prepared to discuss all possibilities in good faith. As the diplomatic discussions continued, Dr. Tita was granted access to the Ascendancy's scientific facilities. What she discovered confirmed their claims. The fundamental forces binding matter in their universe were indeed degrading at an accelerating rate. The Ascendancy's desperate expansion had been motivated by a genuine existential threat. Meanwhile, Hassa engaged with representatives of the various Ascendancy factions, assessing their sincerity and internal dynamics. She reported to Hussein that the power shift Samira had described appeared genuine. The more militant factions were losing influence as the entropy crisis worsened. After 3 days of intensive negotiations, a preliminary framework emerged. The Ascendancy would immediately withdraw from contested DWA territories. Joint scientific teams would work to stabilize the dimensional boundaries and search for solutions to the entropy cascade. A limited cultural exchange program would begin, allowing selected Ascendancy citizens to relocate to designated areas within the Earth DWA sphere. Most significantly, the Ascendancy agreed to share their dimensional rift technology under strict oversight. Technology that could revolutionize travel and communication throughout the multiverse if properly managed. As Hussein prepared to return to Earth with the draft agreement, Supreme Commander Mal requested a private meeting. You surprise me, Admiral Ibarra, Mal said when they were alone in a secure conference room. I expected more resistance, more lingering resentment. Make no mistake, Hussein replied evenly. There is tremendous anger and pain that won't disappear with the signing of documents. But continuing the cycle of violence serves no one. A perspective that took too long to gain traction among my people, Mal acknowledged. We were raised to believe in our inherent superiority, that our evolution represented the pinnacle of human potential. It's difficult to abandon such deeply ingrained beliefs. Yet you did, Hussein observed. Mal's expression grew somber. I commanded the forces that devastated Vecra Prime. I watched 6 billion lives extinguished in pursuit of resources that barely delayed our entropy problem. That level of destruction changes one's perspective. Admiral, it forces uncomfortable questions about the path we've chosen. Hussein studied the Ascendancy commander, seeing for the first time not a faceless enemy, but a being capable of reflection and change. Your cooperation will be essential in the transition period. Many on both sides will resist reconciliation. I am aware, Mal nodded. The Pure Dominion faction has already attempted to sabotage these negotiations twice. They've been contained for now, but the ideological struggle within our society will continue. As it will among the DWA worlds and even on Earth, Hussein acknowledged. Peace is never an easy path. No, Mal agreed, but it may be our only chance for mutual survival. As Hussein prepared to depart, a final question occurred to him. The jazz tactics we developed, they genuinely confused your strategic systems, didn't they? That wasn't a deception to encourage us. Mal smiled slightly. They were devastatingly effective. Our predictive algorithms were based on pattern recognition, spanning thousands of battles across multiple universes. Your improvisation, introducing genuine randomness into tactical decision-making, created blind spots our systems couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our unpredictability, Hussein said. Both our greatest flaw and our saving grace. Perhaps that's what our evolution sacrificed in pursuit of cognitive efficiency, Mal mused. Something worth reconsidering as our civilizations move forward. The return journey through the dimensional rift was tense, but uneventful. When the Concordia emerged in Earth's universe, they found a substantial EDFA fleet waiting in defensive formation. Cortez had taken no chances with their safety. The news of the preliminary peace agreement spread rapidly throughout Earth and the DWA worlds. Reactions were mixed, as Hussein had predicted. Many celebrated the prospect of ending a decades-long conflict, while others protested any accommodation with the civilization that had caused so much suffering. In the following months, the framework was refined into a comprehensive treaty. The Multiverse Cooperation Accord established protocols for scientific collaboration, security guarantees, and a phased integration program for Ascendancy refugees. Most importantly, it created a trilateral council with representatives from Earth, the DWA, and the Ascendancy to oversee implementation and resolve disputes. 1 year after the initial contact, Hussein stood on the observation deck of the Unity Station orbiting Titan. Beside him were Supreme Commander Cortez, Lieutenant Commander Hassa, and Dr. Tita, watching as the first officially sanctioned dimensional gateway opened. Through this stable, controlled rift came not warships, but civilian vessels, carrying scientists, cultural ambassadors, and families selected for the initial relocation program. They would settle in a specially prepared colony on Titan, under careful monitoring but with genuine opportunities to integrate into the broader society. Do you think it will work? Cortez asked quietly, voicing the question they all carried. Long term? I don't know, Hussein admitted. There's too much history, too much pain to predict how this experiment will unfold. But I believe we've created a foundation that gives us all a chance. The latest research is promising, Dr. Tita offered. The combined scientific teams believe they can stabilize the entropy cascade for at least a century, possibly indefinitely, if the current theoretical models prove accurate. And the Pure Dominion faction? Hassa asked, her concern evident. Still active but increasingly marginalized. Hussein replied, Mal's influence continues to grow as the benefits of cooperation become apparent. The ideological transformation won't happen overnight, but the trajectory is encouraging. They watched in silence as the transport vessels docked with the station. History was unfolding before their eyes, the beginning of a new chapter for three civilizations that had once seemed destined only for mutual destruction. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed this possible, Cortez said, shaking her head in wonder. When Morath first appeared with his desperate plea for help, I saw only risk and potential catastrophe. And now, Hussein prompted. Now I see possibility, she replied simply. Difficult, complicated possibility, but possibility nonetheless. As the first Ascendancy citizens stepped onto the station, Hussein reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the desperate defense of Titan to the diplomatic breakthrough, from bitter enemies to cautious partners, it had been a path marked by both tragedy and triumph. The future remained uncertain. The peace was fragile, the trust tentative. But they had proven that even across the boundaries of universes, sentient beings could find common ground when their survival depended on it. On Titan's surface below, construction had begun on a new monument to stand alongside the statues of Nisha Cortez and Morath, a trilateral symbol representing Earth, the DWA, and now the Ascendancy, united in pursuit of a shared future. The inscription would read simply, Beyond extinction lies possibility. Hussein knew that challenges remained. The integration process would face setbacks. Old hatreds would flare periodically. The Pure Dominion ideology might resurge in new forms. But for the first time in decades, the path forward was not inevitably marked by conflict and destruction. Jazz, he murmured to himself, remembering the improvisational tactics that had first turned the tide. Creating something new from what already exists. It was an apt metaphor for what they were attempting now, taking civilizations with vastly different histories and values, and improvising a harmonious future none of them could have predicted. The composition was just beginning, the melody still forming, but the first notes had been played. And in the vastness of the multiverse, that was no small achievement.